Now is the time to sign free agent shortstop Ha-Seong Kim to a multi-year deal. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Thursday, January 16th, your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all my written work, BravesToday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And yesterday, International Signing Day opened for the 2025 J15 class. We saw the Braves add quite a few international free agents on Wednesday. And in all of the news behind the Dodgers not signing anybody because they're going to get Roki Sasaki and all of that other stuff, a couple people missed that there was some, I guess not news, we expected this, but some confirmation. This came from John Morosi of MLB Network. He confirmed that free agent shortstop Ha-Seong Kim will not be ready for opening day. He got injured last August playing for the Padres, the shoulder injury, had surgery, and officially will not be ready for opening day. And so I think now is the opportunity for Atlanta to sweep in and sign Kim to a contract. So let's talk about why you would want to sign Ha-Seong Kim, right? Obviously, it's him versus Orlando Arcia. We kind of see that coming, right? How the contract could potentially work and some of the complications. And then what I think is a hidden upside to maybe signing this contract. But first, the whole thing with Ha-Seong Kim is when he is healthy, he is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop who can give you enough offense to not be a drag on your lineup, right? So he's been in the majors for 4 years, right? He debuted in the 2021 season, got almost a full year, played full seasons in 22 and 23, and then obviously 24, he was actually struggling a little bit. May have been some injury issues before he went down with that shoulder injury. He was diving back into first base on a pickoff. It's funny how so many of these athletes get hurt on the base paths and not even necessarily anything that looks bad when it happens. Ronald Acuna Jr. was just trying to get back to second base and he crumpled to the ground. Ha-Seong Kim dove into first, hurt his shoulder. Shohei Ohtani hurt his shoulder sliding into second, had his hand on the ground and drug his hand along the ground. But back to Ha-Seong Kim. In his 4-year career, he's been worth 15.3 WAR, 242 average, 78 stolen bases. His best when he was fully healthy and playing virtually every day, 2022 and 2023 together. He played shortstop, he played some third, he played some second. Ha-Seong Kim won a Gold Glove in 2023. But those 2 years together, 10.7 WAR in those 2 seasons. Hit 256, had an OPS of 729, 28 homers combined across both seasons. It's 11 and 17 in the 2 years, so he's not a massive power threat. 50-61 on stolen bases. Came out to a 106 OPS plus combined in those 2 seasons. It was a 105 in 2022 and a 107 in 2023. So he can be a positive in your lineup. His biggest talents, skills, obviously, the defense. He's also a very good base runner. He frequently is, I want to say 2023, he was like 93rd percentile in run value on the bases. He was 88th percentile in 2022. So really good defense, really good base running, and then above average on the base paths. Above average at the plate. Not by much, but he is above average. And the thing to understand is it's very much an atypical profile from what the Atlanta Braves usually do, right? Let's go to his best season, 2023. Ha-Seong Kim bats 260 with a 749 OPS plus. I'm sorry, a 749 OPS, a 107 OPS plus. His barrel percentage, 11th percentile, 4.2%. His hard hit percentage, 26.7%, is 3rd percentile. That is the exact opposite of the Atlanta Braves profile. But chase rate, 90th percentile. He's not expanding the zone. Whiff rate, 91st percentile. He's not missing when he does swing. Strikeout rate was 63rd percentile, so still above average, not as good as some of the other stats. Walk rate, 12%, 86th percentile. So he is different from Atlanta's existing roster construction method of we hit strikes hard, we hit for power, we hit home runs. He's not that guy. But seems to me like if you don't have Ronald Acuna Jr. or, correction, you're going to have Ronald Acuna Jr. back probably before you have Ha-Seong Kim back. But it feels like if it wasn't for the existence of Ronald Acuna Jr., Ha-Seong Kim would make a lot of sense as a leadoff man, right? His on base in that his best season in 23 was 351. Even last year when he struggled, his on base was 330. In 2022, it was 325. His career on base is 326. Pretty decent. 206 walks. He averages 62 walks a year. You can see the value of a guy like a Ha-Seong Kim, right? Now, obviously, the reason why you can afford to sign him knowing he's not ready for the season is because Orlando Arcia does exist, right? You are comfortable, obviously, going into 2025 with Orlando Arcia as your shortstop because you haven't heard any reports of Atlanta being linked to official reports, not just speculation from aggregators, but you haven't heard any actual reports of Atlanta being linked to shortstops. As much as we wanted Atlanta to sign Willy Adames or to sign Ha-Seong Kim or to trade for somebody, they've given every indication that they're comfortable running it back with Orlando Arcia to the point of when AA has gone and spoken about the team needs. He's talked about, we've looked to get better in the outfield. We've looked to get better in the starting rotation. We've looked to get better in the bullpen. He doesn't even mention shortstop until he's asked. 680 The Fan, when he had that interview last week, one of the things he talked about was the rest of the lineup is hitting. He doesn't really think it matters what you're getting out of shortstop. So because the Braves appear to be fine with Orlando Arcia at short entering his age 30 season, you can sign Ha-Seong Kim and not need to worry about the fact that he won't be ready to start the year, right? Other teams who were looking at Ha-Seong Kim had to figure out what they were going to do when Kim wasn't ready to start the year. I remember the Giants were a team that were considered to be in on Kim. There's a lot of connections on the roster with him, whether it's from coaching, whether it's from Young-Hoo Lee in center field. I think Lee married Kim's sister or something. There's a lot of connections there. And some of the conversation that they had and talk that was coming out of San Francisco was that Matt Chapman was going to temporarily move to shortstop so that they had a shortstop until Ha-Seong Kim would be ready. And that's if they didn't want to use Tyler Fitzgerald there at short, who, great utility guy, isn't actually an amazing defender. He's good enough, but he's not actually that good of a defender, or he didn't grade out that way at shortstop. The Braves aren't in that situation, right? The Braves are one of those teams where they do want a shortstop, but they can roll with their guy. Because when the rest of this lineup is hitting, you're not too worried about Orlando Arcia and what he's going to do. And in the 9-hole, if 1 through 7, 1 through 8 are hitting like they're capable of, Orlando Arcia has to come in and play defense. Ha-Seong Kim can do everything Orlando Arcia can do when he's healthy, I think at a better level. I think he's a better defender than Orlando Arcia. He's a much better base runner, much better speed. He's a stolen base threat. I do see the offensive upside with Ha-Seong Kim. While I wouldn't take Kim in a home run derby over Arcia, I'd take him in almost every other situation. If I need a guy to draw a walk, I'm probably setting up Kim over Arcia. If If I need a guy to get a runner over, to not strike out, I'm probably sending up Kim over Arcia. That's just kind of how things are right now on this roster and with these guys. And so the Braves are one of the few teams that can afford to wait and would play Kim at shortstop. I've seen reports that the Yankees would be interested because they can afford to wait on putting Kim at second base until he comes back, but it would be second base because they have Anthony Volpe at short. So if he's wanting to show that he's healthy and take a pillow contract to get that free agent deal, I do feel like Atlanta's the best bet because he would get to play shortstop. In just a minute, though, let's talk about some of the contract options because I don't think this is maybe as simple as we expect because of his contract demands and who his agent is. We'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Underdog. Brand new sponsor to the channel. We absolutely love having Underdog as part of the Braves Today family. And this is how it works, okay? They are available all over Braves country. Just about every single state that gets the Atlanta Braves. Sorry, Mississippi, we hate it for you guys. Outside of that, all of Braves country can play Underdog. The way this works is you go in and you fill out your lineup with players who are playing, this weekend, whatever. Let's look at the NFL, right? Playoffs going this weekend. A lot of great games. I'm extremely hyped for Ravens versus Bills, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. And you can go in and you can create your lineup based on the statistical projections from these guys. Do you think Josh Allen is going to come in higher or lower than this yardage total, combined rushing and passing? Do you think Lamar Jackson's going to come in over or under on higher or lower than this touchdown total? Like all of those different things. You choose higher or lower, create your lineup based on if you think they'll beat this stat number or not, this projected stat number or not. And then when you submit it, you get the ability, like you can win a payout based on how many different projections you chose and whether you chose over or under. You can win up to 1,000 times your money. Okay, the link is in the episode description. Use our code BRAVES. This podcast has the code BRAVES. It's not Braves Today. It's not Braves promo. It is the code BRAVES. So, link in the episode description. On Friday's show, we're going to drop our projections for the weekend. You're welcome to tail. You're welcome to send us in your projections. Let me know what you're thinking. But again, thanks to our friends at Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the pod. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about the pros and cons of signing Ha-Seong Kim at shortstop now that we know he's not going to be ready to start the 2025 season. We thought that was a situation. We got confirmation from John Morosi of MLB Network that that is definitely happening. So some of the issues here are going to be if Atlanta decides to sign Ha-Seong Kim. One, you've got to get him through a physical, right? That's a situation where we just saw Jeff Hoffman failed his physical with Atlanta. It wasn't going to stop the Braves from signing him, reportedly. It was just going to change how much money they were comfortable with giving him. But you also have to figure out the contract structure, right? Because most players in this situation who are injured are looking for a shorter term deal with a higher AAV, a pillow contract, right? To rebuild their value and then re-enter free agency and get that long-term pact. Even guys who aren't injured but just aren't getting the interest that they want. Think about Blake Snell before he went to the Giants, right? Or speaking of Blake Snell, think about Matt Chapman, or think about Cody Bellinger, or think about Jordan Montgomery. The Boris Four last offseason all took, all took the shorter deals, right? And it turns out Snell signed long-term with the Dodgers. Chapman extended with the Giants, whereas Montgomery is in his second year. He picked up his option in Arizona, and Bellinger got traded to the Yankees. That's the question here is what do you do, right? Because before the season ended, Ha-Seong Kim switched over to Scott Boras. So you're in a situation where they're going to want the short-term deal. You could maybe still get a longer-term deal in there. There's pros and cons of each. So the short-term deal, some of the projections before the year, the Athletic said 2 years, 36 before winter. Kylie McDaniel of ESPN said 2 years, 42, which obviously would come out to $21 million a year. I feel like at this point, that's probably not going to happen, just based on how long it is. Like, he's a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and he still doesn't have a deal. Maybe 2 years, $30 million if you wanted to do a short-term thing. The complication here, a lot of those Boras guys, when they do that short-term deal, they want either a player option or an opt-out. Those aren't things that Atlanta gives in their contracts. They don't give out player options. They don't give out player opt-outs. They'll either do a straight contract or they'll do a club option on the end of the deal. But assuming you can get over that hurdle, right, and you can figure out a short-term deal for Ha-Seong Kim, there's pros and cons involved. If you sign him to a short-term deal, your major pro in this situation, right, the selling point of this deal is this was a surgery on his throwing shoulder. If he comes back from the surgery and he just has a lower arm strength than he did before, which it was good, right? His arm strength in 23 was 64th percentile. It was 68th percentile in 22. It was 74th percentile in 24, right? He has a strong arm. If he has permanently weakened arm strength, accuracy, whatever it might be, you have the ability to protect yourself from that because it's a short-term deal. He'll be done after, let's say, 2 years, right? I'm not saying you can't play shortstop with bad arm strength. Dansby Swanson didn't have great arm strength, and he won a gold glove at shortstop in Chicago, right? You can play shortstop with not exceptional arm strength. It is harder, right? And I do think it does give you a slimmer margin for error, but you can do it. A short-term deal for Ha-Seong Kim gives you insurance against that situation happening. But it also causes some problems. So, one, typically the shorter-term deal comes with a higher AAV. Even if you do 2 for $30, that's $15 million. If we talked about you had maybe $23 million to spare this offseason, like to still be able to reset the CBT, you would go into the season with $5-6 million left for additions. Not as much money as you would hope. If Ronald has a setback and isn't ready in, early May, mid-May, whatever, and you have to go trade for a guy, you now have to be more mindful of what that contract would be or be willing to exceed the CBT, right? So there's a con there. Another con is the timing of what a 2-year deal would do for you. Orlando Arcia is entering the final guaranteed year of his deal with Atlanta. He's making like nothing. It's like $2 million. He's making nothing. He has a club option for 2026 that's also like $2 million. But if you sign Kim to a 2-year deal, that's 25 and 26. You have Arcia for 25 and 26. You still have to figure out shortstop again in 2 seasons. You buy yourself, at best, 2 years of knowing what to do at shortstop. Now, maybe Arcia figures it out offensively and you don't have to make a change. Maybe Nacho Alvarez is ready. Maybe you make a trade or a free agent signing. Maybe Ha-Seong Kim signs an extension. But the point is, a short-term deal means you still have to figure out what to do after 2026. So you don't solve shortstop like you've solved third base, like you've solved first base, like you've solved center field. You just kick the can down the road a couple seasons. And you can't lock up every player on the field to a long-term deal, but it would be nice to get a little more certainty at one of the more important positions on the field, especially like the most important position defensively. It would be great to get more certainty than that. Now, at the same time, you could do a long-term deal, and there are definitely some upsides and downsides to a long-term deal. Fangraphs before the offseason started projected 5 years and $100 million. I think that was Eric Longenhagen of Fangraphs. If you assume that there's a little bit of a discount to be had in there because of the injury. Maybe it's 5 for 90 or 5 for 85. It's probably still close to 5 for 100. If he misses, let's say he misses half the season, like a worst case scenario here, worst case realistic scenario, he misses half the season, you still have 4.5 years of Ha-Seong Kim. You're not getting that much of a discount because he can't play right away in 25. But let's say you sign a 5-year deal. One of the pros there, if you get him 5 for 80, there you go. Let's just say 5 for 80, 5 for 85. The AAV on a longer term deal is typically lower than it would be on a short term deal. So it's easier to reset the CBT, right? You obviously have that advantage. 2, you now have an answer at shortstop, right? You have shortstop figured out and you don't have to mentally worry about it for probably 3 or 4 years, okay? The con is that is only true if his arm strength recovers, right? Again, throwing shoulder injuries are scary. Kyle Wright still has not touched a baseball diamond in competition like 2 years after having shoulder surgery. Shoulders are scary, and like it's so much less certainty with a shoulder injury than there really should be. So if you sign him to a 5-year deal and the arm strength doesn't come back, again, you can still work it out at shortstop. Dansby Swanson's done it, but the margin for error is slimmer. What if it's not the arm strength? What if it's the accuracy, right? Like, what if because of just the way the shoulder heals, he just can't throw as accurately anymore? Now you have a guy who really needs to be at second base to minimize the impact of the accuracy or the arm strength or whatever, when you also have Ozzy Albies, who is also restricted to second base because he has some of the worst arm strength in all of baseball. Now, again, ways you can work around that. The DH spot will open up soon. Ozzy could DH quite a bit, and then Ha-Seong Kim can play the field, and you can find things to work it out, right? You also have to consider that Ha-Seong Kim is 29 years old. So if you're signing him to a 4 or 5 year deal, you are signing yourself up for his early and mid 30s. And as a guy who is so dependent on athleticism and range, because he's not hitting the ball hard, right? He's running the bases well. He's got great range defensively and arm strength and all of that. Now, if his athleticism ticks down faster than you're expecting, now all of a sudden this has the possibility of being a liability on the back half, right? So you can see some of the issues here. There's no easy answer on Ha-Seong Kim. It is ultimately a risk-reward conversation that the team needs to have, the front office needs to have. Are we confident that, one, we can get a short-term deal done with Boris that's at a dollar amount we can stomach and still stay under the CBT? And then, two, are we comfortable with the fact that if we do a long-term deal, this could go bad on us? Every long-term deal could go bad. But with some players like Austin Riley and Matt Olson, it's a lot less obvious how the deal could go bad than with a guy who is currently unable to play due to an injury. So, some work to figure out here from the Braves front office if they want to do this. But there is an under-discussed benefit to signing Ha-Seong Kim. We'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby in the final segment of the Thursday show, talking about the pros and cons of signing free agent shortstop Ha-Seong Kim to either a short or a long deal. And we got an email earlier in the week from Morris, a Braves fan up in Richmond, Virginia. Shout out, old Richmond Braves up there. One of the Braves minor league affiliates used to be in Richmond. And among the things he asked was about Atlanta not really seeming to be in on Korean baseball players and these Japanese players and all of that. And I had, full disclosure, Morris did ask me to go in and kind of look into see if AA has any sort of history with players from the Pacific Rim, either in or before Atlanta. I did not have a chance to read a lot of articles about it. I did kind of pull some of the Blue Jays transactions to see who he had signed when he was with Toronto. In 2013, the Blue Jays used Munori Kawasaki He was 32 years old, fielder, batted like 230 in like 90 games. They re-signed him after the season, had played in NPB in Japan, came over and signed with the Mariners, and then they signed him when he was in the States already. So I don't know right now of any real connections between Alex Anthopoulos and the Pacific Rim countries and their baseball leagues. Obviously, the last time the Braves signed a notable player from over there was Kenshin Kawakami, and that did not work out for either Kawakami or the team. But I do think that signing Ha-Seong Kim could potentially begin to fix that. I over the holiday break, I read the book Future Value. It was written by Kylie McDaniel of ESPN and Eric Longenhagen of Fangraphs, back when McDaniel was also at Fangraphs. I've mentioned both of them in the show already, so this works out really well. And they talked a lot about the inside, like the business side of baseball and of scouting and how all of this stuff works, right? What scouts are looking at for hitters and for pitchers, how international free agency works both in the Pacific Rim and in Latin America, right? A lot of like how to get jobs in baseball. And I knew a lot of this stuff already because I've kind of been around baseball for a while. But one of the things that really opened my eyes in the book, and I can't recommend the book enough, if you're super into baseball and you want to know more about the advanced stats and all of that stuff, go pick up a copy of Future Value. Is exactly how much relationships matter in the Pacific Rim in general. Players from the KBO, players from NPB, relationships are a huge deal. And they do matter in the Dominican or in Latin America as well, and the Braves have a good presence there. But without having inside information, I would feel comfortable saying that the Braves are probably behind a lot of baseball, and especially the best teams, with their presence in the Pacific Rim. Typically, you need to have full-time scout or two out there. A lot of the prominent players put a lot of emphasis on you coming to scout them in person. We learned a lot of this when the Yamamoto free agency happened last offseason, and there were reports of Brian Cashman of the Yankees flying to Japan to see Yamamoto pitch during the season. Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, flew out to Japan, met with Yamamoto in Japan, had been there for some of his games and things like that, and they still weren't able to sign him over him going to the Dodgers, who also went multiple times out there to visit him, to scout him in person, sent their GM, Andrew Friedman, to go do that. And I don't think it's a money issue. The money here does matter, right? It's not the same as hiring an additional cross-checker to cover the Southeastern United States, right? The money does matter when you're looking at Japan, okay? Korea. It is a significant investment to get a guy out there. It is a significant investment to send your front office staff out there in a season during the season to go visit and scout these players, right? But I do think that signing Ha-Seong Kim could potentially begin the process of fixing that. And I'm not saying the Braves don't want to. I'm not saying they can't afford to. But I'm saying that you do have to lay a lot of groundwork for international free agency or for international free agents from the Pacific Rim to start seeing you as a legitimate destination. You require a lot of prep work. Those of you who are college football fans, it's like building a recruiting class, right? It takes a lot of time to get the quarterback in the fold. And once the quarterback's in the fold, often he helps recruit other players to join your class, right? Part of the reason that Yamamoto and Ohtani both signed with the Dodgers in the same offseason, some of it was just money, but some of it was they wanted to play with each other. The Dodgers had been building the relationships in Japan that attracted Yamamoto. Obviously, it attracted Ohtani as well. They signed Ha-Seong Kim, who was a different player from Ha-Seong Kim, although they played on the same team in Korea, which was confusing. Partly because they have done so much work building relationships in the Pacific Rim, not only in Japan, but in Korea as well. So, I don't know if it would work, right? But it would be a start to being able to show you would now have a player from Korea who could tell other Korean free agents and Japanese free agents and other free agents from the Pacific Rim about how great of a city Atlanta was and how good the clubhouse was, and help them get the meetings and introductions with some of the players that he played with and knew in Korea, and some of the other players that he knows from the Pacific Rim that you would be interested in adding in the future. So another aspect to think about when it comes to signing Ha-Seong Kim. I want to know your thoughts. Do you want Ha-Seong Kim? Are you okay with the fact that he would not be able to play for probably the first couple months, and you would have 3 members of your roster all unavailable on opening day? You're signing up to have 3 guys on the IL on opening day. Let me know your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Braves_today. Again, contact at bravestoday.com. That's how Morris sent us his email. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.